MIL showed up in a wedding dress to ruin my wedding. My dad's epic response made her leave humiliated and in tears. Hey Reddit, before we start, I just want to say that this is our new channel, and we're really working hard to bring you the best stories. So make sure to subscribe and support us to reach 1,000 subscribers very soon. Let's start the story. My wedding day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I had spent months planning every little detail, from the flowers to the seating arrangements, making sure everything was perfect. My fiancé and I were excited, nervous, and overwhelmed with emotions, but we were ready to start our new life together. The venue was breathtaking. The decorations were just as I had envisioned, and our closest friends and family were gathered to celebrate. But then, just as the ceremony was about to start, everything took a turn I never could have predicted. As the guests settled in and the music began to play, my heart raced with anticipation. I held my father's arm tightly, waiting for the moment I would walk down the aisle. But then, there was a sudden murmur among the guests, hushed whispers spreading like wildfire. Confused, I turned to see what was causing the commotion, and my heart nearly stopped. Standing there at the entrance, in all her glory, was my mother-in-law. But she wasn't wearing a simple, elegant dress as I had expected. No, she was wearing a full-blown wedding gown. Not just any gown, either. It was a grand, white, floor-length dress with intricate lace detailing, a long train, and even a veil. She looked like she had stepped straight out of a bridal magazine. Except this was my wedding, and I was the bride. For a few moments, I was frozen in shock. I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. Why would she do this? This was beyond inappropriate. It was a blatant attempt to upstage me on my own wedding day. My fiancé, who had been waiting at the altar, looked equally horrified. His face went pale as he locked eyes with his mother, who, despite the tension in the air, had the audacity to smile as if nothing was wrong. The guests were now openly talking, some gasping, others shaking their heads in disbelief. My mother-in-law had never been subtle about her feelings toward me. From the moment my fiancé and I started dating, she made it clear that I wasn't good enough for her son. She constantly found ways to undermine me, criticize me, and make me feel like an outsider in their family. I had hoped that, with time, she would come around. But this was a new level of disrespect. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure, but inside, I was seething. Before I could say anything, my father, who had been silent beside me, suddenly stepped forward. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. My father was not a man of many words, but when he spoke, people listened. He took a long, hard look at my mother-in-law, his expression unreadable. Then, in the calmest yet most commanding voice, he said, "I didn't realize we were attending 2 weddings today. Where's the groom for this one?" The room erupted in hushed laughter and gasps. My mother-in-law's smile faltered for the first time. Her face turned red as she realized that everyone was staring at her, judging her. But my father wasn't done. "Oh wait," he continued, "this isn't your wedding. You had your wedding decades ago. This is my daughter's day. And unless you're here to support her, I suggest you find a seat, or better yet, the exit." The weight of his words hung in the air. My mother-in-law's eyes filled with tears. She glanced around, as if searching for support, but none of the guests were on her side. Even her own husband looked embarrassed. My fiancé, still standing at the altar, clenched his jaw, looking both furious and humiliated. My mother-in-law stammered something under her breath, but it was clear she had lost this battle. Without another word, she turned on her heel and walked out of the venue, her ridiculous train dragging behind her. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My father turned to me, gave my hand a reassuring squeeze, and said, "Let's get you married." The tension lifted, and the guests cheered. The ceremony proceeded, and despite the initial chaos, it was beautiful. My fiancé apologized repeatedly, swearing he had no idea his mother would pull something like this. I believed him, but deep down, I knew this wasn't over. My mother-in-law wasn't the type to admit defeat so easily. What I didn't know was that she wasn't just going to disappear quietly. No, she had something else up her sleeve. And what happened next would shake our marriage to its core. The wedding ceremony had gone on smoothly after my mother-in-law's dramatic exit, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. I knew her well enough to understand that she wouldn't simply accept defeat and move on. She was the kind of woman who thrived on control, and being humiliated in front of so many people, especially by my father, must have been unbearable for her. Still, I wanted to believe that, for once, she would let us have our moment. I was wrong. The reception started off beautifully. The guests were enjoying themselves, the food was incredible, and for the first time that day, I allowed myself to relax. My husband, yes, husband now, was by my side, holding my hand tightly, his thumb gently brushing over my skin. He kept apologizing for his mother's behavior, but I reassured him that none of it was his fault. We were married, and that was all that mattered. But just as I began to think the night would go by without another disaster, she returned. I didn't see her enter at first. I was too busy laughing with my bridesmaids when I felt the energy in the room shift. It was subtle at first, quiet murmurs, the sound of chairs scraping against the floor as people turned to look toward the entrance. My stomach sank, and I already knew who it was before I even turned around. There she was, standing in the doorway, no longer wearing the extravagant wedding gown, but dressed in a deep red dress that almost screamed revenge. Her eyes were puffy, no doubt from crying, but she held her head high as if she had every right to be there. My heart pounded in my chest. Why was she back? What did she want now? She walked forward with slow, deliberate steps, ignoring the whispers around her. My husband stiffened beside me, his grip on my hand tightening. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low and controlled. She let out a dramatic sigh, placing a hand over her heart as if she were the victim in all of this. "I came to apologize," she announced, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I realize I may have overstepped earlier." Overstepped? That was an understatement. But I held my tongue, unwilling to cause another scene on my wedding day. Instead, I watched as she turned to my father, her expression unreadable. "I owe you an apology as well," she said, though there was something insincere in her tone. "I was hurt by what you said, but I understand that you were only protecting your daughter." My father, who had been watching her with an amused expression, simply nodded. "That's right," he said. "I always will." She gave him a tight smile before finally turning to me. "And to you, my dear, I am truly sorry. I should have never worn that dress. It was insensitive of me." I almost believed her. Almost. But there was something off about the way she spoke, as if she were performing rather than truly apologizing. Still, I nodded. "Thank you," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Let's just move on and enjoy the night." For a moment, it seemed like that was it. She had apologized, however insincere it might have been, and we could finally put the incident behind us. But then, just as I was about to turn away, she added, "Of course, I only acted that way because I was feeling so emotional. It's not easy watching your only son make the biggest mistake of his life." Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that settled over the entire room. My husband's body went rigid beside me, his jaw tightening as he stared at his mother in disbelief. I felt my own breath hitch, my hands curling into fists at my sides. Did she really just say that? The guests were staring now, their shock evident. Some of them exchanged uncomfortable glances, while others simply watched, waiting to see what would happen next. My father, who had been sipping his drink, placed his glass down with a quiet clink, his expression hardening. "What did you just say?" My husband finally spoke, his voice dangerously calm. She let out a sad sigh, as if she were the one suffering. "Sweetheart, I love you, and I want what's best for you. But marrying this woman?" She gestured toward me, and my stomach churned at the way she said this woman like I was some kind of mistake. "You're rushing into something you'll regret." I felt my throat tighten, but before I could respond, my husband did something I never expected. He stood up from his chair, walked over to his mother, and in the quietest, yet most firm voice, said, "Leave." She blinked, taken aback. What? "You heard me," he said, his voice unwavering. "I let you ruin enough of this day. I let you humiliate my wife, disrespect my father-in-law, and now you're trying to make this about you. It's not. This is our wedding, and if you can't be happy for us, then you don't belong here." Her face crumpled. "You're choosing her over your own mother?" He didn't even hesitate. "Yes, and if you ever want to be part of our lives again, you'll need to start respecting my wife." The silence in the room was deafening. My mother-in-law looked around, as if hoping someone would come to her defense, but no one did. She was alone in this. Finally, with tears in her eyes, she turned and walked out, this time for good. The second she was gone, it was as if the entire room let out a collective breath. My husband turned back to me, his expression softening. "I'm so sorry," he murmured, wrapping his arms around me. I buried my face in his chest, feeling a mix of emotions: anger, relief, exhaustion, but most of all, gratitude. Gratitude that, despite everything, my husband had chosen me, that he had stood up for me in a way that left no doubt about where his loyalty lay. The rest of the night went on without any more interruptions. We laughed, we danced, we celebrated. And though my mother-in-law had tried to ruin our day, she had failed. Because in the end, all that mattered was that we had each other. And as I lay in bed that night, still in my wedding dress, my husband's arms wrapped around me, I knew one thing for certain. She might have tried to sabotage our happiness, but she only made our bond even stronger.